Hello, I'm Katie, and this is Stepmum Space, the judgment-free zone where we talk candidly about the fairy tales and scary tales of stepmom life. So whether you've been a stepmom for years, you're just starting out, or you want to understand the stepmom in your life a little bit better, this is the place for you. My guest today is Nicholle, a woman whose story echoes a painful pattern I've heard far too often. A stepmom facing false allegations. In our conversation, Nicholle opens up about what happened, how she navigated the emotional fallout, and the complex mix of love and resentment she felt towards her stepchildren at the time. She shares how those allegations reshaped her relationships with them and what it's taking to rebuild trust and stability in the aftermath. Nicholle is deeply compassionate, and I'm so grateful for the honesty and vulnerability she brought to this chat. Let's dive in. So, Nicholle, welcome today to Stepmum Space. I'm so happy to have you all the way from the USA. Whereabouts are you today?
I'm actually in St. Louis, Missouri, so right in the middle of the U.S.
Wow, and it's very early in the morning for you, so thank you ever so much for getting up extra early to talk to me.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, look, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. So I actually met my husband back in 2016, and he was actually living about 5 hours away at the time when I met him. He's in the military and was finishing up some stuff. And so we were just seeing each other kind of on the weekends. And then about, I don't know, maybe 3 months or so after we started dating, he introduced me to his 3 kids. They were pretty young at the time. So met them very early on and had a really good relationship from the beginning. We just kind of connected very well. And so, yeah, just, dating a man with 3 kids was a new experience for me. I didn't have any kids of my own, so it was kind of, thrusted into a family.
How long had he been separated from their mum at the time?
He had been separated for about 1.5 years from their mom.
And you say the kids took to you really well.
They did. I was really nervous about how that might work out because obviously, they had a mom, they had a dad. So here's this new person in their life. But it kind of started out as like just a friendship. They built that relationship with me, and I tried my best to, be just an extra person in their life, like an extra person just to love them, to look after them and take care of them. And it was a really good bonding experience.
And at that point, your partner was still in the military and you were X hundred miles away.
Well, at this point, he had actually moved back. So when I met him, he was finishing up a couple of months of work in the military. But then at this point, whenever, our relationship got more serious, whenever I met the kids, he was still doing military work, but locally here in St. Louis, not several hours away.
Okay. And the kids were with their mum a fair bit, I guess?
Yeah, so he was they're with my husband about 50% of the time and their mom 50% of the time. So it was a very messy schedule when I first met my husband. They were being shuffled back and forth quite a bit during a given week, which was challenging. But they were eventually able to kind of modify that schedule to where the kids were, with my husband for a full week and then with their mom for a full week. So about halfway through 2017, I actually moved in with my husband, which was a different set of challenges because now I'm not this, fun person that dad's dating. I'm actually, more involved. And I had a bigger role when I moved in because my husband was going to an academy here locally for fire school training. He was also working a part-time job at the time. So I started playing a bigger role, helping the kids get ready for school, sometimes, taking them to drop them off to school or to preschool if they were, not in school yet. And so that was, a different set of feelings and challenges.
And so how old were they then?
They were 6, 4, and 2 at that time.
Wow. And to go from not having any children to what, like maybe 1.5 years later?
Yeah.
How did you find it?
Yeah. I mean, it was challenging. But I think the rewards really outweighed the challenges. The kids were so sweet, so loving. It had so much love to give. They had already been through, having your parents divorce is traumatic for a kid. So they had gone through that, but I didn't ever really see much from that. Like they definitely, they say kids are resilient. Kids rebound very quickly, and I got to, kind of reap the benefit of that. They were, fun to be around. We always found fun things to do. We're always laughing and having a good time. So fortunately didn't really have to kind of overcome that set of challenges that some step parents have to overcome.
And so when your husband was away quite a bit, working or training, you have responsibility for the kids. Were you kind of empowered to do whatever needed doing, or did you have to seek any permissions? How did that all work?
I kind of took care of the little stuff, I would call it. Like I said, getting them ready for school, helping them with their homework, getting them to whatever sports they had going on. But anything bigger than that, if it was like a doctor's appointment or a decision that needs to be made for like a medical reason, anything like that, definitely, deferred to my husband to let him and the kid's mom make that decision.
It's something that we come across quite a lot, is people saying, I have to do all the kind of day to day, but I don't actually have a say in what goes on.
Yeah, that's a very real statement. And it's hard because, you're in a situation where you're taking care of somebody and you love somebody and you want to be part of that decision making, but a lot of times you don't get to be. And that was really kind of a hard pill for me to swallow. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't ready for that. But at the same time, I think I maybe had a better understanding of that than some people do, because I was a stepkid myself. My parents divorced and remarried when I was 3 years old. So I understood where the kids were coming from. A lot of times I would tell myself, like, tell my husband, like, I don't agree with you and I don't agree with their mom. And this is where I'm at because I have that perspective and it's different. And, sometimes I think that was a benefit to the situation.
Yeah, that external viewpoint can always be really helpful. And what was the relationship like between you and their mum?
So for the first maybe 6 months or so, she was very nice to me. Not overly nice, but nice enough to be amicable and get along. And then there was a day that stands out in my mind. The youngest child, the daughter, was sick and she needed to go to the doctor. My husband was working, their mom was working, and I was the only one available. And so I said, I'll take her. I'll make sure she gets taken care of. So I took her to the doctor's office, got her seen by the doctor. They gave us some medications. And that evening was when she was supposed to go back to her mom's house. That was the custody arrangement. So I reached out to their mom to see, where she would like me to take her, if she was going to be there to get her from me. And then after that was all taken care of, she was dropped off. Later that evening, I received a text message from their mom saying that in the future, the only people that are permitted to take her or any of the other two kids to the doctor's office was a biological parent, and that I really had no business doing that. And it was really frustrating to me. I didn't understand, why it mattered who took her to the doctor. Like at the end of the day, the kid just needs to see a doctor. The kid needs some medication. And I was trying to do that. And so that was really kind of the breaking point for me, Katie. I said, you know what, if this is how it's going to be, then I don't want to communicate with you. I don't have to communicate with you. I don't want to communicate with you if that's how you're going to treat me. And so I pretty much just cut off all communication at that point, which is hard because, there's times where, there was so much going on that my husband would need help, or, the kids would need something that they left at their mom's house and my husband was working. And so it was challenging to make that decision, but I felt like I had to make that decision because it was the best decision for me from like a mental capacity. Like I couldn't handle, any sort of like ups and downs when it came to the way I was being treated by somebody.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of people who can relate to that. And it's that ability of another person to just totally derail your day with a text.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
did you literally sort of block her?
Yeah, I sent her a message back and I just said, At the end of the day, all I want is what's best for the kids. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just be an extra person to love them. I said, but if this is how I'm going to be treated by you, if it's going to be, nice to me one day and mean to me the next, I said, I can't handle something like that in my life and I don't have to. And from now on, you can communicate solely with the children's father because I have nothing else to say to you.
And did you block before you got a response, or did you get a response?
I did not get a response, which was fine with me. I don't know that I necessarily needed a response, but I had to end that because it was not beneficial whatsoever.
Interesting that you kind of noticed that so quickly and made that decision so quickly, because I think a lot of us get to such a point where we're so broken down or we're so used to being attacked that we kind of feel like we have it almost feels like a negative choice that we have to make rather than a sort of positive choice in the beginning to say, hang on, I'm not going to be talked to like that.
Yeah. It did help me. And I guess this is a good point to give it a little bit more of a background. I knew that she had struggled to manage relationships pretty much her whole life. My husband actually went to school with her. They grew up together. So he knew her from a very young stage. And she had struggled with relationships with her parents, with friends, with spouses. She actually very quickly remarried after my husband and her got divorced. She was with that guy for about 2 years and then is now remarried again since then. So it kind of reassured me that this is not a me problem. This is the role that I'm in kind of problem. And I knew that, relationships were a challenge for her. So it helped me not take it so personally.
Yeah. I say to a lot of the women who I work with, you could be anybody. It's not you. Whether
Yeah.
it's a problem with the child or a problem with the biological mother, it's the role. The role is so challenging. And I think even more
Mhm.
so when you're coming from a place where you don't have biological children at that point and you're just, going in it with all the positive intentions. And then it's kind of like, okay, so I'm looking after someone else's kid. I'm taking them to the doctor while they're at work. If it was a friend of hers who took her kid to the doctor, she'd probably be really grateful, but it's because you're in that
Yeah,
role. Um,
exactly.
and that's so tough. So after you'd blocked BioMum, what happened? How did it pan out? Did your partner manage to communicate effectively with her?
Yeah, so some interesting things happened after that point. I somehow, and I've never really kind of pinpointed how this happened or put too much energy into trying to figure it out, but I became this target of hers after I decided I wasn't going to communicate. It was awful and it was exhausting. So after that decision was made by me, the kids would come home to our house and say, mommy said that you're a bad person. Mommy said that you are not a parent and we don't need to love you and we don't need to listen to you. She would send text messages to my husband complaining about me, signing off of a reading log for a kid for homework where we had to say that they did it, or taking a kid to a soccer game. Anything and everything that I did was a complaint of hers if it involved the children. It was it was exhausting.
Yeah, I can imagine. And again, it's like, listening to the kids read, doing all the things that need to be done. You're doing a positive thing. And whilst you can understand that might feel hard for biomum to think, actually, somebody else is with my kids when I'm not, but you have to overcome that feeling as a biomum yourself. I say this a lot to people. You got to work on your own shit, because the minute you start
Yeah.
saying things to your kids like, well, you don't have to love her, you don't have to like her, she's not really a parent, you're just totally destabilizing their home life experience. And what mother would want that for their child?
Yeah, it was really hard. I felt for the kids. I continue to feel for the kids because this has not stopped, since then. And I just felt like, they were being put in the middle of a situation that a kid should never have to be put in the middle of.
Yeah.
And, trying to, you could see it happening, every day, like them, wanting to like me and wanting to love me, but then hearing this voice in the back of their head saying that they shouldn't.
Yeah, the research shows that the kids who really, really like the stepmom find it even harder because they feel so guilty, because they feel like they're betraying their mum. So that can only have been a a much, much harder thing for them. Did your partner ever try and have a conversation with her about what she was saying to them?
Yeah. He tried to have a conversation with her about, what she was saying to them, and also trying to understand like why, why his now wife, me, is being targeted. And, she just said that nobody should be able to, do any of those things or help with any of those things that isn't a parent. And, she was remarried at the time. And so my husband said, well, isn't your husband helping with stuff? Like, aren't we in the same situation here together? And he wasn't. I don't know, much about that relationship as far as, why that was the case. But at the end of the day, again, it was just more people to love the children. Like, there were grandparents involved and aunts and uncles involved who would do the same thing. So why is it okay for everybody in this situation to be loving the kids and helping the kids, except for the stepmom?
And what did you do then? Like, practically speaking, did you carry on signing the reading book, or did you? Because the reading book thing reminded me of a situation I remember with my husband when we were dating in the early days. And I would sometimes listen to his kids read, but I would always say to him, oh, can you just write in the book? And I think that was because I, at the time, was sharing my child with my ex, and he didn't have another partner. But I remember thinking, like one day somebody else is going to be listening to him read, and that's feels like so personal, but also something that you would really want somebody to be doing. Well, how did you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I continued to do everything I was doing because again, for me, like it wasn't about anybody. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about my husband. It wasn't about their mom. Like it was about making sure the kid got what they needed. And so I just continued. And of course, she continued to complain about it. And I guess, maybe I would have had a little bit more understanding of her perspective, if the things were getting done in her house. But the kids would come home to our house and no reading logs were signed off for the entire week that they were with her. They would miss at, sporting activities when they were with her. And so, in my perspective, she didn't care enough to be able to take care of those things. And so my mentality was like, well, someone has to do it. So I'm going to make sure it gets done.
100%. I think when the biological mum isn't stepping up, it almost is. You'd think it would be more of a relief for them when the stepmom steps in. But was she struggling to cope, or what was making things kind of not happen on her watch?
Yeah, I think she was struggling to cope. She was at this particular time, she was pregnant with another child through her second husband. And that relationship was still fairly new with her second husband. So I think there was a lot going on there. And I think there was just, overall a lot of changes happening. She just unfortunately wasn't always putting the kids first in those changes and those decisions. So I think it was just a bunch of struggling going on kind of across the board. And unfortunately, the kids were in the middle of that.
Yeah. And did their reactions and relationships towards you change as their mum was trying to change their perception of you?
Yeah, yeah. For a time period, there was, like I kind of mentioned earlier, constant, trying to have a conversation with them, which was hard because they're still so young at this point, but trying to help them understand, what's going on and help them understand that, that I'm not trying to replace their mom. I'm not trying to, pretend like I'm their mom. I'm just trying to love them. And so I think we were fortunate, our kids are really smart, and, they fell to that belief for a short period of time, but it didn't take them long to kind of come out on the other side of that and realize that it doesn't matter if it's a stepmom or a stepdad or a teacher or whoever it is. Like, we're all just there to have their best interest and to make sure they're taken care of.
It takes a village,
Yes.
but not if that village includes a stepmom.
Correct.
We laugh, but it's so sad that it's true, right? So difficult. So your relationship continued to grow with the stepchildren.
Yeah. So several years went by. Relationship continued to grow. I was really close to all three of them for quite a while. And then, I'm going to fast forward a couple of years. Throughout those years that we fast forward there, I still continued to get targeted by their mom, but I kind of just got used to it, which sounds awful, but I got to the point where I could kind of just brush it off my shoulder and say, like, oh, I'm not surprised that that's happening, but I'm not going to let it bother me.
In what ways were you targeted?
It's the same thing has continued to happen, talking about me. There was a time where I remember I showed up to a parent teacher conference with my husband only because one of the children asked me to be there. Because I help them so much with their schoolwork. So they said, I want you to come. And I remember showing up to that parent teacher conference and she walked up to me and said, you're not welcome here. You're not a parent. You need to leave. And I thought like, well, I'm not leaving because I'm not here for you. I'm here for the kid. But it was just petty things like that just, I never could make sense of. And it just continued year after year, month after month, day after day. Like it never ended. But I think my husband and I both got really good at just kind of, deflecting it and brushing it off our shoulders and just kind of ignoring it, if you will.
Yeah. If it wasn't affecting your relationship with the children, it's probably easier to isolate it.
Yes. Yeah. So several years, went by of experiencing that and just kind of figuring out how to live with it. But there was a big event, a big moment just about, let's see, 6, 7 months ago at this point. I was at home. It was a weekend and my husband was working and he works, about 48 hours at a time because he's a firefighter.
Wow.
And I was at home with the kids and we were actually going to go shopping because school was starting in a couple of months. This was the last summer at this point. The oldest child, who was 12 at the time, he said, I'm not going clothes shopping. And I said, well, we're all going clothes shopping. Like, I need you to come with us. And he said, well, I'm not going. And so I called my husband and I said, I need help. Like, I don't know what to do. He's refusing to go. And so my husband tried talking with him and he just said, no, I don't have to listen anymore to Nicholle and I don't want to go. So I'm not going. It resulted in him actually leaving our house and I'm going to say running away, but you have to understand that his mom lives like less than a mile from our house. But he just left, walked out a front door and went to his mom's house. And that was really hard for me. I felt like a failure. I felt like I, couldn't parent anymore. I couldn't do anything right anymore. I mean, the kid who, I've known now for, it was 6 years at that point, like just essentially walked out the door and said, I don't love you anymore. I'm leaving. So that was really difficult. My husband got off work the next morning, went over to his mom's house to get him, to bring him back home. And the kid said, no, I'm not going. And his mom didn't make him come. His mom said he's 12 years old, which was mind-boggling to me, but he's 12 years old. He can make his own decisions. So my husband spent about an hour sitting in front of their house trying to get him to come home. He refused.
What was he saying were his reasons? Because, I've had a 12-year-old son. I know he would hate to go clothes shopping, especially for school uniform. But it sounds like there was more going on than just you were trying to make him go and get some school uniform.
Yeah. So there was a time period that kind of led up to this event in the summer where he started blaming me for a lot of things. And it was kind of silly stuff. Like he would blame me for making his bathroom dirty. Like he says, I dirtied his bathroom. It wasn't him. There was a time where he needed to find his baseball stuff to go to a baseball game and he couldn't find it. He said, I must have stolen it. So there was some pretty bizarre claims coming out from him, which didn't make sense. But I suddenly, kind of moved from being this target of their mom to being a target of him. And I didn't know how to process that because up until this point, we had a really good relationship, but it was almost like a light switch flipped on or a coin flipped over. It was just kind of a completely different treatment from him. And so, we were trying to work through this, obviously, talking with my husband about, what's going on, and trying to figure out, why this is happening, where his head is, kind of just what's going on. And so, we tried for a while to kind of, talk to him and try to figure this out, but we weren't making any progress. It was just kind of continuing to get worse, unfortunately.
And what was he saying to you when, your husband or you were kind of trying to understand why is he being like this? What's going on? What's changed? Is he okay? What's making him feel like this?
Yeah. I mean, we obviously had big concerns and he would just say, things like, oh, well, Nicholle must have done it because who else could have done it? Or, my mom told me that Nicholle did this to her one time. So now I believe that she's doing this to me as well. It was things like that didn't really make sense, didn't have any kind of context to support it. There was nothing really deeper that he would say other than surface level, if that makes sense. So we were never able to figure out, what event or what conversation or what thought kind of caused this to start happening.
So then his stepson said he's not coming back to your home. His dad has tried to talk him round. That's not working. Where were the other two kids at this point?
So they were with us. They were still, with my husband and I, because this was a Friday when this happened, and they weren't set to go back to their mom's house until Sunday. So after my husband spent about an hour trying to get him to come home, he came back home, my husband did, and the child that had ran away actually had a baseball game later that morning. And so we decided that the four of us, my husband, I, and the two other kids, would try to go to the baseball game and then try to get him to come home with us after the baseball game. So that's what we did. We packed up, went to the baseball game, watched the game. And then at the end, my husband walked over and was like, all right, Chase, let's get your stuff and we're going to go home. And he said, no, I'm not doing it. So my husband was like, why aren't you coming home? Like, what's going on? Like, I need to understand this because I can't help you if we don't have this conversation. And he said, well, I've talking to my mom, the past, I don't know, maybe 12 hours at that point that he had been at her house since he kind of ran away from our house. And she said, that she will always be there to take care of me, but you always leave for work, so you're not there to take care of me. And I'm left with Nicholle, who's not a parent. So it's not in my best interest to be with somebody who's not a parent. And I just think it would be better if I lived with my mom from now on.
That doesn't sound like how 12-year-olds speak.
No, it's not how 12-year-olds speak. It was very clear when you could tell that he was just stating words that he had been told, unfortunately.
It's so sad. I've seen that happen with children. It's heart-wrenching to see them using language which isn't theirs.
Yeah.
But in the context of them actually now believing something or thinking they should believe something that isn't true.
Yeah.
And so what's happened with him since then?
Yeah. So a couple of days later, that Sunday, I'll never forget it. It was Sunday morning. I was getting ready to take one of the children to a birthday party, and my husband was at a softball game with the other child. I got a knock on my door, and it was DFS, which is Division of Family Services. Division of Family Services let me know that a report had been made against me. They're not able to share at the time who made the report, but a report had been made against me that I was physically abusing and hurting the children, all three children.
Oh.
And my heart dropped. I was in a situation where I was there with one child. My husband was not there at the time. Of course, he was with the other child at the softball game. And I just thought to myself, like, you have got to be kidding me. I cannot believe that somebody would make this up about me when for the past, 6-7 years at this point, like, I've done nothing but take care of them and be the best person that I can be for them. So, she was there with the report, and her job is to, interview all parties involved to try to figure out what actually happened. So she interviewed me.
There and then. Right
there on my front porch. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So nothing like being put on the spot for something that you didn't do.
And I guess your stepchild was in earshot.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually had to bring him downstairs to the main level of our house and have him interviewed. Mind you, we're literally walking out the door in 10 minutes to go to this birthday party for his best friend.
Oh.
So he is now suddenly having to sit at our kitchen table and talk with a stranger that he's never met before and answer these questions like, has your stepmom ever hurt you? Has your stepmom ever put you in a situation where you didn't feel safe? Has your stepmom ever taken you somewhere that you didn't feel safe? All of these questions that he was 10 years old at the time, like for a 10-year-old, like to all of a sudden have to be answering these large questions about these really difficult topics.
And were you in the room at this time?
No, I wasn't allowed to be in the room.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
So obviously they told you afterwards.
sure.
I have so many things I want to say about this. So I think like in the UK we have social services, which is probably the same type of thing. And it is right and correct and proper that obviously they need to investigate things. So I kind of don't hold any judgment on them because they have to follow up on reports. And, you know, we've had some horrible, horrible stories in the UK where things have happened to children that social services were aware of and hadn't, you know, followed up to the correct extent. My huge issue is with whoever made the report, unless they really, 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 really thought that there was a problem. And I'm going to throw my guess out there that it was Biomum who made the report, and genuinely she didn't think you were harming the children.
You are 100% correct, Katie. Yeah, so she did make the report, which I was able to find out afterwards. The worker did have to interview, you know, my husband, the daughter, and then obviously the son who ran away. All claims were found to be false because it didn't happen.
How long did that go on for, that whole process?
It was about 2 weeks before we received the phone call back from the worker letting us know that the false was found to be claim.
And then is there any comeback on the person who reported it because they've made a false claim?
There is not. In the state of Missouri, there has to be 15 false claims within a 30-day period for there to be any action taken against the person who makes the false claim.
Wow. And I guess there's a difference between making a false claim and, say, somebody, I don't know, I'm hypothesizing, a teacher being concerned about a pupil and calling DFS and them saying, is it DFS?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a furniture store here, so it sounded weird when I said it. And yeah, so I've totally lost my train of thread now. Yeah, I guess it's really different from if you've got a genuine concern about a child that turns out to not be, you know, that what you didn't need to have your concern, everything's okay. That's different to
Yes.
Knowingly making a false claim. Like you'd have to be all kinds of crazy to do that. Like, and if there's no comeback on her, did you and your husband have any communication back with her about it, or did anything happen with the children? Like, I feel really enraged on your behalf, like literally like bubbling, because those type of things and those types of accusations can have such terrible implications. And even for yourself to have to go through that, because you know what the truth is, but you don't know what somebody else is going to think the truth is. And
correct. Yeah, that was my biggest concern. You know, I had seen over the past several years that their mom was able to convince anybody of anything. And that was my biggest fear, that, you know, there was going to be belief that I did something that I didn't do. So, you know, it was a sigh of relief, obviously, when the claim came back to be false. But during that time frame, I guess it was about a month, you know, about 2 weeks for that process to go through. But then for about a month, the oldest child did not come back to our house. He stayed with his mom the entire time, despite, you know, my husband's efforts to, you know, try to talk to him. My husband went to his school to try to have lunch with him a couple of times, went to some of his baseball games to try to talk to him. We tried to call him on the phone, and the child just refused to communicate, stating that, you know, my husband and I both were terrible people and that he didn't want anything to do with us.
Hey, can I steal a moment? If you've been listening and quietly thinking, I wish I had somewhere to say the things I don't say out loud, I might have the answer. I want to invite you into a space where you don't have to hold it all together. A space for the thoughts that sit heavy, the feelings that don't always have words, and the questions that surface when there's no one to ask. It's calm, it's clear, and it's built around you. A space where you can speak freely, be fully heard, and start making sense of it all, while moving forward in a way that actually feels good. Whether you're navigating tricky dynamics, setting firmer boundaries, or just trying to feel more like you again, this is where we begin. If that sounds like something you've been craving, head to stepmumspace.com and book a free intro call. I'm a qualified transformational coach and stepfamily specialist, and I would love to support you. All right, back to the episode. Whilst he was in that place, and it must have been incredibly difficult for you and your husband, what was the impact on yours and your husband's relationship, if any, at that time of your stepson not coming?
Yeah. It was hard. We stayed strong together throughout the process, but I can't sit here and say that, all days were sunshine and butterflies, because they weren't. I think my husband, we both kind of felt differently about it. My husband was feeling like, his oldest child, his first child, was just kind of ripped out of his hands for no good reason, no reason that, was ever explained to he and I, and that, there was nothing that he could do. He made a report that the biological mom was in contempt of their parenting agreement. But I don't know how much you know about family court, but it takes forever for anything to happen. So he made a report, and, that went in a file, but nothing ever got done about it. It just stayed in a file. So he was helpless as far as, trying to make anything happen. And then on the other hand, I was feeling kind of like I mentioned earlier, like a failure. I felt like for whatever reason, I, according to him, kind of torn everything apart. We were no longer this family of 5 that was having a good time and going to a theme park or going to see a movie or whatever. And we now have this kind of hole in our family. And I kind of felt responsible for that, even though I didn't do anything to make that happen.
It takes a long time to wrap your head around that and to accept, actually, it's not you as a person, it's somebody else's response to you. And I think it's really easy for the stepmom to blame themselves when the child decides to not visit. And this happens to many, many, many stepmoms, but you just have to look at the fact that, well, the other children are still coming. So if you were that bad, they wouldn't be coming.
Yeah, exactly. So he eventually came home. It was hard for me at that time when he did come home, because I didn't know what to say to him.
I guess you feel in that situation a bit like the trust's broken.
Yeah. Yeah, very much broken. I didn't know what to say to him. I felt bad for him, because I don't, still to this day, like, I don't think it was truly him that was saying that he felt this way or saying the things that he said. I think that there was a lot of beliefs put into his head. But we spent, a couple of months kind of just surviving. We didn't know what we were going to get kind of day to day. So we just tried to make the best of it. But we had this kind of awful situation.
Did it change the dynamic with the other 2 children there?
Yeah. It was hard, because I felt like the other 2 children were kind of pushed to the back burner a little bit, because we were having to spend, a lot of time to try to make this repair and to figure out, even what we were repairing, because we were kind of really blind going into the situation. So I recall, a lot of times that we typically would have been doing other things with the other 2 children, or even all together. Like they just stopped happening, because we had an emergency on our hands that we had to start focusing on.
Did you feel any resentment towards him?
I did. Yeah, I was really frustrated with him for a while. And, I kind of felt like, I've done all of this stuff over the past 6 years to love you and to take care of you and to just be your biggest fan, be your biggest supporter. And I kind of thought, like, how dare you? Like, it made me feel like I was just so quickly tossed in the trash or tossed aside. Like, I just didn't matter anymore. And that was it was really difficult to swallow that.
And I guess then when you have those sort of confronting thoughts, which are really understandable, but because not very many people talk about them and talk about those things, and you're supposed to be so thrilled that he's back all the time and you're back to being one big happy family, like, probably deep inside you, you couldn't maybe share those feelings with anybody, which I
Yeah.
guess then exacerbates your own personal guilt.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it was hard. Like I was glad he was back in a sense of like, okay, I'm happy that, we're all five together and I'm happy for my husband. But if I'm being honest with you, like it was just hard. Like I wanted him back, but at the same time, like I didn't want him back because it was just this kind of like toxicity that was, living in our house every other week and I didn't know how to handle it.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I hear you. How did you handle it? What happened next?
well, I didn't have much time to handle it. Shortly after the claim was came back to be false by the DFS worker, my husband and I were actually at our lake condo, a couple hours from our home on a weekend. And we have a video security system outside of our house. And I'll never forget, we were getting ready to go out on our boat and our doorbell had rang at our house. And my husband answered it, and it was two police officers at our front door. And my husband said, what's going on? His first thought was like something's going on with the children. And they said, we're here to serve an order of protection against Nicholle on behalf of all three of your children. And my heart dropped. Um, it felt like a really hard attack against me, almost like, she tried to file this claim with Children's Protective Services or DFS. That didn't work for her. So now she is filing an order of protection against me because she wants me gone. I was convinced at that point that she wanted me gone because she thought if I was gone, then my husband wouldn't have anybody to help her take care of the kids and that he would have to give her more custody with the children, was how I was feeling. So for 2 full days, because we ended up staying at the lake, we didn't come home. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to have to deal with it. 2 full days, of a time that we were supposed to be having fun together. I remember sitting in the bathroom floor of our condo, just crying because it was there. I mean, there were so many emotions. I thought, like, how dare somebody do this? Like, let's be adults and let's have a conversation. Um, and then, I'd never been in trouble in my entire life. And now I have this order of protection filed against me. So that was another piece of this. And the order of protection stated, that I couldn't be within 500 feet of the children. I couldn't see them. I couldn't talk to them. I couldn't tell anybody to tell them anything I said. I suddenly had the kids that I had been, helping raise for 6 years, like just completely taken out of my life. And then on top of that, since my husband has custody every other week, then every other week until, whenever this was going to be over, like we had to figure it out. Like I had to go live other places. My husband took the kids to go live with his mom for a while. Like we were just suddenly in this situation of just total crap is the best way I can explain it.
I'm so, so sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah, it's by far the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my entire life.
And how long did it take to investigate?
So it was never truly investigated. So my husband immediately hired an attorney when this happened. So 7.5 weeks went by before my attorney was able to convince her and her attorney to modify the order to where I could be around the children as long as my husband was around. That brought me back into our house, when the children were here, which I remember my husband was getting off of work one morning and I had already came back to the house because the kids are with their mom. My husband picked up the kids and brought them to our house. And the oldest child, who, this all started with, walked right past me, walked downstairs to the basement, didn't say a word, which is what I expected. The other two children came to me immediately, and we sat in our kitchen and cried for a good 5 to 10 minutes. They had been leaving me things throughout that time, which was, fine. They were able to do that. I remember they went trick-or-treating and they left me a pile of my favorite candy on the kitchen counter for me to come home to. They colored some pictures and mailed them to me in one of the places I was staying for a while. And so they were still able to communicate with me. I mean, I wasn't able to communicate with them, but they were able to communicate with me, which helped me get through that. But the reunification of us, it was hard. It was heartbreaking.
And during the time when you weren't allowed to see the children and you're going off every other weekend, or your husband's going off every other weekend, the two youngest children had obviously wanted to maintain that relationship. So how much did they know about what was going on and why you weren't there?
Yeah. So they didn't know until my husband picked them up after she had filed the restraining order. He picked them up to begin his week, and they both said, like, "Oh, what's Nicholle doing at home? We're excited to see her." And my husband said, "Nicolle's not at home." And I said, "What do you mean?" And so he had explained to them, what happened, which they were really frustrated about, because she, in the paperwork for the order of protection, she had stated that the two kids said these things about me, and they didn't even know. They never said it. They didn't know that their names were tied to any of this.
How old were they then?
Let's see. They were 9 and 11.
So, like, you've got an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old whose mother is saying things that they have said that they know that they haven't said. And the impact that that's had is somebody that they love has been taken away from them. Like, I, I have no idea on what planet their mum ever thought this was, firstly, an acceptable idea, but also like a good idea, because surely you're just showing your own children that you're lying. Forget the whole bit about, you're doing an entirely immoral, horrible, horrible thing. But I don't even see how she thought it would help her reach her goal.
Unfortunately, I don't think that she really thought about anybody in this situation besides herself. I think for her, it was a means to an end to get what she thought would happen to happen, and didn't take any of the kids into consideration. The only thing it did was damage. It damaged the relationship between the kids and their mom, and it damaged. I mean, I can't say it damaged our relationship, because it didn't damage our relationship. It probably strengthened our relationship. But it definitely caused pain and hurt for everybody involved.
And where are you now in your sort of reunification journey?
Yeah. When the agreement was made to allow me, back around the children, as long as my husband was around, I'll never understand it. I'll never understand the legal system, but apparently, because there are children involved in an active court case, because the day before she had filed the restraining order against me, she had also filed a motion to modify the parenting agreement between my husband and her. So now, because there's this case open with my husband and her and the 3 kids, and there's also this order of protection, whenever we were able to get me back into the house, the language that states that I can be around as long as I am not around without my husband was also tied to their parenting agreement. So right now, that's still the case. I could be here, but if my husband isn't here, the kids can't be here. And that's going to be something that's in place until their mediation or their changes to the parenting agreement are made. And we're 5 months into that right now, and there's been no headway. So yeah, it'll be that way until there's a new parenting agreement in place.
So does that mean that the kids are with you guys less now?
Yeah. So when my husband goes to work, the kids leave and go to their mom's house. And it's even down to something as simple as, like, if we're making dinner and we've forgotten something, either my husband and all 3 kids have to leave to go to the grocery store, or I have to leave to go to the grocery store. Like, there's no middle ground on anything, which is hard, because, I feel like there needs to be some repairing done. Like, I would really appreciate some one-on-one time, especially with the 2 younger kids, to help kind of rebuild what their mom has unfortunately tried to tear apart. But I can't do that right now. So I'm just trying to figure out, ways that I can accomplish that around our house and kind of make the best of it. One of the kids really likes to bake. So I've been, baking some things with her, on our own, but obviously still in our house. And the other kid has this game that he likes to play a lot. So I've been trying to play with him one-on-one to try to figure out, how I can accomplish that goal, but staying inside of our house to do so.
And I can see from how you're talking and that it's had a massive, massive impact on you personally.
Yeah. Um, I've never been in a situation where I, felt like I needed counseling or needed therapy, but I had to hire a therapist that I still talk to this day because it's not over to try to get through this because I was feeling a lot of feelings. I was feeling guilty, even though I didn't do anything. I was feeling obviously very sad. It was a very traumatic event. Like I just, had everybody that I loved just completely, ripped out of my hands. And I was frustrated because I felt like, how can somebody make up anybody about anything? And then it's just put into place. Like there's no investigation, there's no proof of anything that's required. Like you can just say something and apparently it's true. So I had to get some pretty serious help to try to get through that. And thank God. I mean, I felt ashamed, I felt embarrassed, but I found a really good therapist that I'm so fortunate for her, so lucky to have her. Because I don't know, where I would be right now if it wasn't for her.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And what about your husband? How's he doing?
Um, we're still facing these challenges with the oldest child. It's interestingly enough kind of moved away from me onto him. So now he's kind of dealing with, he didn't have a restraining order filed against him or anything like that, but he's dealing with really similar emotions right now that I was going through. He's the kind of person that says, like, I'm fine, it's fine, everything will be fine. But you can see it in his eyes that it's not okay. He's feeling like he has no voice, I think. I think there's a stigma sometimes. It's really unfortunate that, the mom has to be right, or the mom is the one that loves the kids the most and takes care of the kids the most. And I think he's up against that battle right now. Like he's trying to show I love the kids. I've always loved the kids. I have their best interests, and I'm up against this kind of monster, unfortunately.
And we haven't talked about grandparents or extended family members. Have you had support from them?
Yeah.
Sorry, we just need to take a moment to appreciate your mug. So you won't be able to
Thank
see this.
you.
You won't be able to see this because it's audio, but Nicole's holding up a
Yeah.
mug which says Stepmum Strong.
Yes. Yes. I got this for Mother's Day a few years ago and I really love it.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So my husband's family, most of them are not local, but his parents are local and his parents have been phenomenal. My parents are also not too far away. They've been phenomenal. Just trying to, make sure that we're taken care of. There's been some times where we've had really hard days and, his mom has made dinner and brought it over. His mom is really good about calling me just to check in on me because she knows that I mean, obviously she knew his ex-wife and the kid's mom, so she knows the kind of situations that we're dealing with. And then my parents, they every month or every other month have sent the youngest children like little care packages, which I thought was really sweet and little cute ideas because they know that we're not in a good spot, and it's kind of like Groundhog's Day, that movie Groundhog's Day. Like every day is just kind of the same. Like we're just trying to get through it because we don't know what to expect. And so we're just trying to exist right now, which is just hard.
Yeah, yeah. I think you speak for so many women when you're saying like you just always had the kids at the center. You've just been trying to do what's best for the kids. You don't want to be their mum. You just want to be an extra person in their home. And I think if more biological mums could just remind themselves of that and look at it as you would if your best friend stepped in to do something or your sister stepped in to do something. And you don't have to become best friends with the stepmom, but I think it's so important that, as you have done, everybody kind of understands, well, everyone's got a role to play here. And I'm obviously like furious on your behalf and I'm just really grateful to you for being so vulnerable and sharing what you've been going through. And I'm sure that it will help a lot of people who have or are going through similar. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. As I was going through this most recent set of challenges, I really kind of thought to myself, there's so much value and so much enjoyment in having stepkids and being in a step parent role. And I just, if my message today or in the future, it helps just one person, like I'm glad to tell that story because I want people to realize that they're not alone and that, other people are going through this exact same thing.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I'm always so grateful to everybody who gets in touch to share their story, because, one person's story can be the next person's survival guide.
Absolutely.
So
we're all in this together.
We are. Anywhere in the globe. Like, that's the thing. These problems are not, country or continent specific. You can speak to any stepmom anywhere in the world and we have the same problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, look, wishing you all the best, and I'd love to, hear how you get on and do get in touch again, and hopefully we'll be able to have good news about where things have got to in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope to do the same.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Oh, Nicholle, what a heartbreaking situation for such a kind, courageous woman to endure. And yet she's meeting it with the resilience and grace that so many of you show every single day. Not a wicked stepmom in sight. Nicholle, thank you again for trusting me with your story. I truly hope things begin to ease, and I know your honesty will have brought comfort and solidarity to so many listening. If you've got a story to share, and let's be honest, most of us have, I would love to hear from you. You can find me on social media at stepmomspace or get in touch via stepmomspace.com. We'll be back next week with another new episode. Until then, take care. Lots of love.